Hello and greetings. Hope that you and your family and your land and your animals and your plants are all well and healthy. Doing, doing. Okay. So this video might go all over the place, but that's okay. That's typically something I do. So in the last video, I was talking about 9/11 and wanted to kind of refer what's happening right now in correlation to 9/11. And I feel like I want to elaborate on that. Um, so there has been a lot of proof that the whole thing was completely simulated. That those who were flying the planes were not actually um, that they're still alive to this day, okay? That no one actually died in the towers. Now, I know that this is very controversial and that there are those who will say differently. When it comes to things like some of the school shootings that were made very amplified, there is reporters and proof that people have went to these places and found it kind of like a ghost town, abandoned. The schools hadn't even been used in years. I'm also excited because if you have the chance to watch the movie Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, I highly recommend it. It goes into details about what we call aliens, and it goes into detail about what the CIA and the government are willing to do to manipulate us. And I mention that because we're seeing a lot of manipulation with the crisis. And I'm just going to do a little wordplay. Crisis is spelled Crisis, like cry Isis, crisis. Isis is in there. Isis is a goddess's name, a crying goddess. You create a crisis, and this is what happens. So, it teaches us, or it shares with us, what happens to us when there is a crisis or when there's these high volatile things. I'm also going to mention Tupac. There's tons of information and proof out there. They say that he is actually still alive. That things are created to get an emotional response from us, which triggers our mental and it triggers our emotional. And how that can literally, it's done it to me. I've totally been thrown way off course by emotional triggers, absolutely. And I think that that's pretty normal. And i'm gonna I'm gonna do a little replay here, or a little back play, so to speak. When this initial COVID came out, we saw the air clean up. We saw animals come down closer to cities than ever before. We saw and have been seeing changes in people's careers where they then had to go online or do Zoom courses and things like that. So then a lot of people who used to have to drive and commute to work were able to work from home and spend time with their families and actually spend time on their yards, and some people took up new habits like jogging, yoga, being more creative. So, and I've mentioned before that in this culture, specifically the United States, not this happens all around the world, and actually Africa is another place, specifically South Africa, where racism or classism mixed with racism, or as we've been recognizing, what is called systemic racism, really, I mean, it really gets everybody going because it's ridiculous. the fact that lynching, a hate crime, isn't illegal. How is it not? Because we have laws against murder. So I don't quite understand that. So I'm gonna. This is a big loop around here. Um, if you do get a chance to watch that movie, please do. I found it on Amazon, and I know that people are kind of against Amazon right now. You might be able to find it on YouTube and rent it. Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And in there, it also talks about the connection with said aliens. What I'm getting is that I'm getting a few things here. One of the things I've spoken about before, and others speak about it, is what the first peoples or the original peoples really look like, which are what we now call African American. And many people are learning that they never came from Africa. Their ancestors are actually from these lands, and through the process of stealing the lands or systematically eliminating people, certain places like the great parks that are in the United States, those were indigenous lands. So that's the other thing. Like, the government is making money off of parks that were originally indigenous lands, and the indigenous people were extremely dark skinned and often had hair like what we call an afro, which is a whole nother word displacement, so that we call our natural hair something that is not actually original, because different peoples throughout the land, including the Mohawk, which I didn't mention in my Bible book, but that in the Atlas of the Bible, which I shared in one of my other videos, a couple of videos back. There are actually depictions of people with mohawks, which I have never seen in the Egyptian hieroglyphs or in any of the stories of recent. What's that? I mean, and then the Trojans with their thing on their head. I mean, what? These connections have just got to be much more realistic. So, or much more than we're being told. So I'm so excited. When it comes to aliens and the idea to intimidate and to create a military force and the attacks of people of color, I realize it's interesting because I'm willing to say that the melanated people and dark-skinned people of the earth are the parents of all peoples, including white people, which are traditionally albinos, which is also the name of a Sibyl, which I believe was an albino, and that is an influence to how that got switched around. And that if melanated people on the earth are the parents of the races, then is it highly possible that a lot of the aliens are also dark skinned or of different colors, like blue? I mean, this is mentioned in the Sibyl Bible, that all the peoples used to have specific skin color, like blue, like lapis lazuli is mentioned in there, ruby red is mentioned in there. So when it comes to alien beings or the star beings, and we're told that we're star beings, I have a theory that the star beings are also melanated and look like dark-skinned people. And we know that there was like the Dogon have known about Sirius long before the telescope was invented. But of course, the credit goes to the person who has the telescope. And we've had medical people try to scientifically prove that white people are of a higher intelligence than melanated people. Well, with the scientific culture has left out are there are giants. They have found skeletons of giants around the world, and then what happens is, from what I understand, the Smithsonian or other places like that will quickly come and scoop up the information, and then it poof disappears. We know that in South America there are museums that have the elongated skull. We have seen the elongated skull represented with those of the Egyptian um, royalty, so to speak, the pharaohs. And we know that to this day, certain cultures will wrap the heads of their children so that they will have elongated skulls. And we also know that in certain cultures, they will also elongate the neck and the ears. There is some hints here. I think there are hints. Just like I think there's a hint that if we're seeing staged riots, that maybe highly possible things are staged. Please look into these things. Well, I can't tell you guys what to do. Do whatever you want. I myself have looked in, and there are people in my family and community that also look deeper into things and have found some contradictive articles and footage of what is happening right now to what we've been force fed. So we had a cleaner environment. We had people picking up healthy habits, sharing health tips, how to stay healthy, during this time of a very, suspiciously deadly virus. Okay. We know that certain things have come out about that in relation to like 9/11, that people have come forward and expressed how they might be being influenced. And we saw like a healthier planet. People also being able to say, maybe I can step away from that over there and go towards this over here, because I've been doing that my whole life. And unprecedentedly, people were coerced into staying home and not going anywhere. No alcohol, no sports, all these things that would also occupy our time besides working. And people were given an opportunity to do things they may not have done before. And I also recognize that this has also affected a lot of people economically, and that's not okay. In those instances, people who do have and have had are happy to share. It's very healing to stop. And I've often had the theory that if people stop, and if things were to stop, like new cars and a new phone and a new this and a new that we would be able to sustain the damage that has been done to the planet. We wouldn't be creating more trash. We wouldn't be creating more things that aren't really necessary for the planet. So, with everything that's going on and the relation to the movie, I do think that it's highly possible that what we call aliens are actually our parents, the seeders of all beings. And this is something I feel like I'm pretty positive. That's my own personal opinion. I was not totally crazy, but I think it's highly possible. There's so many stories that link this. And where the crisis energy comes in, so we know that consciousness is the fastest traveling energy, that consciousness is something connected to the planet and to all the peoples. So if we continuously bombard the consciousness with a certain energy, it is absolutely going to affect the body. It's absolutely going to affect what we see outside of us. And then that manifests, you know? So in this, I am also pretty convinced, there's so much proof to this, that the beginnings come from the mother. And we can see from Eve being demonized, we can see to even Mother Mary or Mary Magdalene, and Medusa, because stories get retold to us. I know I'm jumping around here. Stories get retold to us. Who is telling us the story? Why are they telling the story this way? When they tell stories a certain way, it influences our own meaning behind the stories. This is not negating the control people. And I want to remind that a lot of the lawyers and doctors and judges were appointed to make sure that witches and those who practice magic were proven to have had sex with the devil, which I still think is hilarious. It's a very busy devil. So, where the Medusa story comes in, we've all been taught that Medusa was this hideous woman with snake-like energies, and not only snake-like energies, but her hair was of snake, and if you looked at her, you turned to stone. And then the story comes out that she was actually quite beautiful, that Athena was jealous of her. So see what happens right there. They because of her beauty. So here's this goddess who's a goddess, and everybody worships her, including Medusa and her sisters. They all worship Athena. They're devoted to her. They go to her temple. Poseidon thinks that Medusa is so gorgeous that he wants to have sex with her. And even though you have to be a virgin to be one of Athena's followers, Poseidon rapes her. Medusa goes to Athena, and Athena supposedly is so mad at her for not being a virgin anymore, apparently can care less that she's raped, and kicks her out of the temple and then curses her with snakes on her head, and that people will turn to stone if they look at her. I don't think that's the case. I think that Athena probably cast out Poseidon, or there might not have been, I believe that more of a cohesiveness happened, nothing to do with jealousy, because then that creates like women being jealous of other women, when I know from the beginning women weren't jealous of other women. Women supported other women because they were all mothers, and we understood about community, and it wasn't about who was prettier or who had the nicer body. Every body created is beautiful in its own way because it's functioning in a miraculous way. And we knew these things. We knew the old ways. We knew these things. So if we can perpetuate separatism, and if we can perpetuate hate and anger and rage through creating hate and anger and rage, because we've been told a lot of stories that are not true. Like being from Africa. There's a story that we had to watch every year at school that's supposedly based on fact, and it has made tons of money. And it is not based on fact. It is not based on fact. It is based off of somebody else's story that was retold to us so that we could develop if I tell you a story, I'll do a short story. I'm on the phone this morning, leaving a message on WhatsApp to one of my brothers about this awesome movie I'd watched last night. And then I start seeing a peacock crossing the road. And I'm just so surprised because we could hear the peacock, but to have it just walk up on the road and walk across the road, I thought it was a turkey at first. And I was like, that's a really big turkey and it's all by itself. And then my cats are here and one of my cats is looking at it and the peacock comes right up to the cat and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to do something to the cat. It didn't. Everyone was just curious. You are able to listen. Okay. And then the peacock went about its way. I took some pictures. Super looked up what it means metaphysically. And then 2 deer showed up in the yard, which is also quite cool. So as I'm telling you the story, you're able to imagine certain things. You're able to image. Image is in imagine. You're able to imagine certain things. So if we tell you a story and we add the image, it's just like when you have a nightmare or when you have a good dream, how it affects you emotionally. And so what is being perpetuated is I believe, a distraction, not a distraction in a geared way. Because let's get real, this is to be of color, there has been a lot of distractions over there. So that when people of color want to speak about what is going on with them, something over there will be the reason it doesn't get talked about, it gets placated, or basically dismissed. And this recreation of dehumanization. Well, if we are star beings, we can live. Thoth lived 53,000 years. Abraham lived 900 years. Moses lived 700 and something years. Stress and crisis will affect your bodies in ways that we are not aware of. It changes your brain. It changes the electronic signals within your body. And then what happens is your brain starts getting fed off of a signal that it becomes comfortable with. So you can reprogram your brain. You can reprogram things. And then there's all kinds of scientific proof of what consciousness is, how it actually functions. And we have what they call whistleblowers, or people who've decided to come out and tell the truth about what our government and what the media, which I think comes from Medea, who's a whole nother story that I think got all twisted around, to influence the emotions of each being, to not look to the stars, to not remember, forget. This is another word I want to dissect real quickly. Forget. Forgetting. This is forgetting. I'm going to get something from you. So if you don't remember, somebody is getting something from the lack of memory. So if we are constantly keeping outside people who are watching and even ourselves from remembering who we truly are, from remembering that we have the capability to change things immediately, to heal the body, to heal the soul, to heal the mind, to heal and share in mass ways, then that's going to happen. And then here's what happens. The environment's, there's all the smoke and all this destruction. It's like ramping us back up for doing what we've been doing all along, just in a different way, in a positive way, in a protesting kind of way. Yeah, protest this crap. It's crap. and protest the possibility that we are being mind effed. That we are being played a movie and we are playing right along with it. Yeah, because each time we get told a story and then we retell it and then we retell it again, and somebody decides they want to influence us in a certain way, specifically to create a military force against a group of people that may or may not exist, we have to create them existing. We have to create it. So that's my theory. I think that aliens are actually our grandparents, that they look like us, and specifically melanated people, and this is a added media spectacle to influence the opposite of what is actually real and possible. Because if we knew we could live for hundreds of years, thousands of years, which we know we can because it's written. Everyone around the world has studied how these different beings live for hundreds of years, at least hundreds of years. Then so much of what we are bombarded with would not have the capability of causing the things that it causes. All right. May you be favored. May the land around you, your families, and your animals be safe and healthy. Until next time.